Tonight on the Black Channel, tonight's program may be a little bit wonky because we're going to be going deep into some stats and figures and policy, but I think it's going to be very important and actually very enlightening. I would like to start with a story here from NBC4 out of Washington, D.C., and bear with us for just a few moments here because this really lays the foundation for tonight's subject matter and will help to illuminate this for you going forward in the future. There's a story that's coming out of DC now about a certain commander and what they're doing, the crime statistics there. I'll let them go ahead and give you the details.
A DC police commander is under investigation for allegedly making changes to crime statistics in his district. Tonight, the police department confirms Michael Pulliam was placed on paid administrative leave in mid-May, a move that came just a week after Pulliam filed an equal opportunity complaint against an assistant chief. And the police union accused the department of deliberately falsifying crime data. News 4's Paul Wagner has the story.
Well, hi there. The DC Police Union is putting its allegations on the record tonight, claiming police supervisors in the department are manipulating crime data to make it appear violent crime has fallen considerably when compared to last year. As of today, according to the DC Police website, crime is down 25%, a decrease the chairman of the police union calls preposterous. The union's allegations come as the former commander of the 3rd District stands accused of doing what the union says is being done day in and day out.
To areas where we know that
That's Michael Pulliam standing with the chief of police at a recent news conference. At the time, he was the commander of the 3rd District, which patrols the neighborhoods of Adams Morgan and Columbia Heights. In early May, 5 law enforcement sources familiar with the investigation tell News 4 Pulliam was placed on administrative leave with pay and told he was under investigation for questionable changes to crime data. A move that came just about a week after he filed an EEOC complaint against Executive Assistant Chief of Police Andre Wright, according to 3 law enforcement sources familiar with the complaint. The reasons for that later in this story. News 4 reached out to Commander Pulliam for comment. He denied the allegations against him and referred us to the public information officer. As for the union's allegations, Chairman Greg Pemberton laid it all on the table.
When our members respond.
Now, this is the part I want you all to listen to right here. Listen to what he's about to explain to you all, and this lays the foundation for everything we're going to talk about tonight.
The table.
When our members respond to the scene of a felony offense where there is a victim reporting that a felony occurred, inevitably there will be a lieutenant or a captain that will show up on that scene and direct those members to take a report for a lesser offense. So instead of taking a report for a shooting or a stabbing or a carjacking, they will order that officer to take a report for a theft or an injured person to the hospital or a felony assault, which is not the same type of classification.
Greg Pemberton says the police department's command staff is focusing on 2 categories in order to get the numbers to fall. They are armed with a dangerous weapon, an injured person to the hospital.
When management officials are directing officers to take reports for felony assault, or if they're going back into police databases and changing offenses to felony assault is not a category of crime that's listed on the department's daily crime stats. It's also not something that's a requirement of the FBI's Uniform Crime Reporting Program.
What? Oh, did you all know that? Yeah, did you know that doesn't go into the FBI crime database the way you thought it would? Yeah. Let me go ahead and play that one more time for you.
Management officials are directing officers to take reports for felony assault, or if they're going back into police databases and changing offenses to felony assault. Felony assault is not a category of crime that's listed on the department's daily crime stats. It's also not something that's a requirement of the FBI's Uniform Crime Reporting Program. So by changing criminal offenses from, for example, ADW bat or ADW gun to felony assault, that would avoid both the MPD and the FBI from reporting that as a Part 1 or a felony offense.
All right, so when he said their ADW aggravated was aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and battery. So he's saying if you instead change that to being charged with felony assault. Oh, well, that doesn't go to the FBI crime database the way that this does here. Yeah. Interesting. I'm pretty sure it would be the same thing if we change other things. For example, if instead of charging you with vehicular manslaughter or attempted vehicular manslaughter, and we change it instead, to reckless driving, instead of driving under the influence, found it to be interesting right there. That, just little changes, even with something being called a felony. By the way, it doesn't get reported the same way.
I would avoid both the MPD of the FBI's Uniform Crime Reporting Program. So by changing criminal offenses from, for example, ADW bat or ADW gun to felony assault, that would avoid both the MPD and the FBI from reporting that as a Part 1 or a felony offense.
Pemberton says the union has been gathering evidence for some time now by looking at reports and talking with officers all over the city.
What we've heard through our members and through members of management that are willing to talk with the union is that this is a directive from the command staff, is that they want to make sure that these classifications of these reports are adjusted over time to make sure that the overall crime stats stay down.
Interesting. Because you see, I didn't quite go in the same direction with this that some other folks might have been. Because I see a lot of crime all the time. I see a lot of crime all the time that never gets reported. Jeffrey Epstein, for example, we know that he had trafficked thousands of girls, and we know that he had dealt with a whole bunch of people, and yet instead of everyone being charged as a RICO, because you see, Diddy, using the legal money from his music sales, you had some scum of the earth, lowlife U.S. attorney under the Biden administration, and then under Trump, try to tell you that using your legal income is a racketeer, influence, corrupt organization. Yeah, your money's legal, but if you spend it on something illegal, oh, that's a corrupt organization, and we can put you in prison for the rest of your life. Interesting, nobody's coming at Jeffrey Epstein for the RICO. None of them are pushing for that. You don't see any of your state attorney generals anywhere pushing for RICO. So everybody can go ahead and catch this felony. None of that. So I thought that was very interesting that I see these huge crime rings where there are literally hundreds of suspects, and all that's just been swept aside. So none of those people are going to be counted among your crime stats. Hell, Jeffrey Epstein was barely counted, and we got to go back and check to see if he actually was. But these folk here can commit outrageously heinous crimes, and I just wanted y'all to know that, by the way, all these Epstein accomplices, since none of them are being charged, we know the crimes were committed, but none of those are going to go into your stats. None. None of those are going to go into your stats. Not a one. So everybody who was involved and everybody who took part, oh well, no harm, no foul. I mean, plenty of harm, no foul, definitely no felony. And you won't see Megan Ku Klux Kelly or Tucker the Sucker Carlson or Ben Supremacist Shapiro, you won't see any of them talk about, by the way, can we discuss those crime stats? Can we stop for a few moments and discuss those crime stats? Anybody? Can we speak about that for a few moments? Because we can start with Epstein and then we can keep going. Plenty others like him. If we're going to, I would like to talk about those racial crime stats. No, nothing? No word at all? We don't get to talk about that? Wow. Okay. Alrighty then. In this case here, folks, not only are you not going to get a conviction, you didn't even get to the point of an arrest. That's the point I'm trying to make. Not even an arrest. I'd like to go a little bit further here, though, because I would like to give you a case. I'd like to give you a case that you would think would be pretty open and shut, but it isn't. And the police, the government, and the media all in on it. So let me go ahead and walk you through this right quick. For those of you who know, there was flooding there in Kerrville, Texas. Bunch of folks died. Very, very unfortunate. Around July 4th, a bunch of folks died. And one of the places in particular that has come up is a place called Camp Mystic. Camp Mystic, tragically, dozens of girls, died, drowned. A parent's worst nightmare, among other things. I'd like to show you some of the news coverage, and I'm going to ask you all once again, bear with me. Bear with me, and don't try to jump ahead of me here, because there's levels to this. Bear with me, because some folks are out there giving faulty information. I want to make sure you have accurate information. It talks about Camp Mystic's owner warned of floods for decades. He talked about the fact that this was flooding problems for decades, and then the river killed him. From Kurt Devine and Casey Tullen. Dick Eastland, this is Mr. Eastland of the Eastland family. There's a reason why I'm telling you about the Eastland family. Dick Eastland warned for decades about the hidden dangers of the beautiful but volatile Guadalupe River, a peril he saw firsthand while running his family's youth camp alongside its banks. Eastland saw floods damage Camp Mystic again and again, and his pregnant wife was even airlifted to a hospital when the camp in Central Texas was cut off by floodwaters. He successfully pushed for a new flood warning system after 10 children at a nearby camp were swept to their deaths in 1987. What? 1987. 38 years ago. And in recent years, he, Mr. Eastland, served on the board of the local river authority as it supported renewed efforts to improve warnings on the Guadalupe. Quote, "The river is beautiful," Eastland told the Austin American-Statesman in 1990, "but you have to respect it." But after 27 people were killed at Camp Mystic in last week's cataclysmic flooding, mostly children, CNN, don't do an Epstein here, along with Eastland himself, who died while trying to rescue his young campers. The scale of the tragedy highlights potential missed opportunities by Camp Mystic's owners and government officials to better mitigate those risks? Tell me more. Now, it says here that about a decade after it was installed, the warning system that Mr. Eastland had championed in the late 80s became antiquated and broken. The River Authority ultimately shut it down in 1999, saying it was, quote, unreliable, with some of the system stations not reporting information, according to an article in the Kerrville Daily Times. So, folks, about a decade after he advocated to get this flood warning system put in back in the 80s, a decade later, they shut it down. Yet, periodic attempts to adopt a more modern flood monitoring system, including one with warning sirens that might have alerted campers last week, repeatedly failed to gain traction, stalled by low budgets, some local opposition, and a lack of state support. We'll come back to that one. At Camp Mystic, meanwhile, several of the cabins that were hit hardest in the flooding were in an area identified by the federal government as the highest risk location for inundations, that's flooding, people, from the Guadalupe. Even as the camp built new cabins. What? Even as the camp built new cabins in less risky flood zone elsewhere on his property, nothing was done to relocate the buildings in the most danger. Quote, camp officials might have not been aware of flood risk when they first built the cabins before the county even had flood maps, said Anna Sarah Lobe, a University of California, Berkeley researcher who studies flood risk. I will come back to address that, Miss Sarah Lobe. But after the recent construction, she said, officials should have realized they were in an area of, quote, severe hazard. Folks, remember, he talked about the dangers of the flooding back in the 80s. And yet, just in the last couple of years, he was building new cabins. Building new cabins in an area that they already knew was at severe flood risk. And this is 30 years after the original warning system that he had advocated to get put in had been shut down. 20, well, in this case here, 25 years later. 25 years later, so he was very well aware that that warning system he had advocated for 25 years later had been shut down and was no longer working, and yet he was building more cabins and expanding the footprint of his family's camp. That's the point I want to make to you. They were expanding the camp 25 years after the warning system had been shut down. So he was fully aware for a quarter of a century. Says here that Eastland has been praised as a hero for his efforts to save campers on Friday and remembered as a beloved figure by generations who spent their summers in the idyllic Riverside Refuge. His legacy is less clear. Really? His legacy is less clear as a public steward of the sometimes deadly river that ultimately took his life. Camp Mystic did not respond to a request for comment. And here it talks about history of floods. So they have had a history of this kind of thing happening. A lack of progress. In the following years, the early flood warning system that Eastland advocated for and was once considered state-of-the-art started to suffer problems. In April 1998, the company that maintained the system, quote, closed its doors without notice, and the gauge system soon stopped functioning because of lack of maintenance, the Kerrville Daily Times reported. In February 1999, the River Authority shut the system down because it had become, quote, unreliable, with some of the system stations not reporting information, and board members worried about liability concerns that the system would send false signals, according to an article in the Times. A handful of river gauges remain in service on the Guadalupe today, but the county lacks a full-scale warning system to broadcast public alerts when floodwaters rise. Kerr County officials, along with the river authority that Eastland periodically served on, so he wasn't just the camp director, he didn't just advocate for these things, he also served on the river authority. They worked to change that over the last decade, searching for funding for a flood warning system that included more river gauges and a network of sirens. But they found themselves struggling to overcome funding deficits and opposition from some skeptical residents. Well, I'm sure that makes perfect sense. Sure, that makes perfect sense. Now, doesn't it? Grant applications for the system were denied by the state in 2016 and 2017, and the authority later decided not to pursue a separate grant after realizing that it would only cover 5% of the system's cost. Think about that for a few moments. So they wanted the government to cover the cost. We'll come back to that. Around the same time, Camp Mystic was embarking on an expansion project as the number of girls attending the camp grew over the years, leading to wait lists to get in each summer. The camp built more than a dozen new cabins farther south of the Guadalupe River alongside the smaller Cypress Creek. Some of those cabins were located in an area that the federal government has determined has a 1% chance of flooding each year, which would have required officials to get special approval from the county government to build there. There's a story behind that too, by the way. There's a story behind that. The risk was even higher at some of Camp Mystic's cabins closest to the Guadalupe, several of which are located inside the river's, quote, regulatory floodways, the areas that flood first and are most dangerous, according to federal flood maps. Those cabins have been around for decades, historical aerial photos show. Apparently, before the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, first flood zone maps were developed. Dealing with pre-existing structures like these inside risky flood zones is especially challenging, said Sarah Lobe, the UC Berkeley flood expert. So they're back again saying, well, it's just difficult to deal with. Difficult to deal with. I'm going to skip past this to save a little bit of time, but we'll come back to this. Since Sarah LeBay argued that Kerr County should move past the blame game that comes after any disaster and focus on the lessons that could be learned for protecting people from floods going forward.
Oh, please.
Ain't that interesting? When it's time to hold white people accountable for something, folks tell you we got to move on. Nobody cares about this. Let's not play the blame game. Forgive. Why y'all talking about that old stuff? However, for black people, Bill Cosby, Sean Combs, whoever it is, we can go back decades on you and the media won't bat an eye or blink. They won't bat an eye or blink about it. So when you black, there is no time limit. I just couldn't help but notice. Now, folks, hang on to your hats because it keeps going. They say it's not clear. Y'all knows it. It's not clear. His legacy is unclear in the facts. It's not clear whether Eastland personally grappled with the high-risk flood zone running through his own campground. But in recent years, he was part of continued efforts for an improved flood warning system for the region. Eastland returned to the River Authorities Board in 2022 after being appointed by Texas Governor Greg Abbott. After the previous setbacks, the board this year moved forward with a proposal to create a new centralized dashboard of rainfall, river depth, and other data sources to, quote, to support local flood monitoring and emergency response, according to the county government. In April, the River Authority voted to hire a firm to develop the data system and had planned to begin work this month. That was postponed after last week's disastrous flooding. So that occurred. Very tragic, very unfortunate that occurred. But then we go a little bit further here. This is from NPR. Camp Mystic asked to remove buildings from government flood maps despite the risk. Damn! Oh, so if you just read CNN's article, you didn't get the whole story. Well, this kind of changes the perception of things now, doesn't it? Mr. Eastland? Mr. Eastland, you were in charge of Camp Mystic, so when they say Camp Mystic, they mean Mr. Eastland. So according to them, Camp Mystic had asked to remove buildings from the government flood maps despite the risks. The federal government allowed Camp Mystic, the all-girls summer camp along the Guadalupe River, to remove multiple buildings from government flood maps, even though private data suggests the flood threat remained and was even worse than the government reported, according to documents and data NPR has reviewed. The camp requested that FEMA, the agency responsible for creating maps that help warn Americans where water might rise, remove more than a dozen people. Their camp had dozens of buildings. Remove more than a dozen buildings from what FEMA designates a floodplain at least twice in 2013, 2019, and 2020, the documents show. Yes, this was a tragedy, but this was a tragedy that unfortunately, nature caused it, but man did a lot to make it happen. No one can say they didn't see it coming. As a matter of fact, folk just kept on marching and saying, well, we got a camp to run. But you can see they were warned over and over and over again. And this is in Texas. Now, had this been the turkey leg hut, they would have shut it down the very first time. We're going to come to later how it is that this just kept on rolling and they could go for decades like this and nobody stopped them. We're going to get to that. It says the last request in 2020 coincided with a major expansion during which the camp built a number of new structures, but does not appear to have taken down any cabins from dangerous flood areas. So they had cabins in the severe areas. The whole place there was a flood area. They didn't do anything about the ones in the severe area and were building new cabins the whole time. And it didn't take any amount of time to find this. None whatsoever. The camp asked for the changes after FEMA created the new maps in 2011. Folks, they're saying that in 2011, FEMA made maps saying that you're in a flood zone. And they said, hey, FEMA, can y'all change that? So let me get this straight, Mr. Eastland. You were not able to install a replacement for that old flood system that stopped working. You couldn't do that. You didn't have enough political pull to do that. But you were apparently good chummy friends with the governor of Texas, and they had no problem exempting your property from being able to build in an active flood zone. Are you sure you couldn't have installed that system, sir? Because it seems like you had plenty of pull, plenty of influence, and plenty of resources to get the state and federal government to do anything you wanted for the benefit of your business. So for the benefit of your enterprise, you could get the federal government to do what you wanted to, but you claimed that you couldn't install a warning system? It says removing structures from FEMA's flood maps can eliminate federal requirements to build in ways that can better withstand a flood according to federal rules, usually by elevating buildings or shoring up foundations. It can also remove requirements for property owners to carry flood insurance. They had dozens of buildings on their property, and they didn't want to have to build to flood code. So to save money, many cabins and buildings at the camp were already, I said many, y'all, many, were already at a higher risk of flooding than previously indicated by FEMA's maps, according to an analysis by NPR, PBS's Frontline, and data scientists. More than 24 campers and counselors, along with the camp's owner, Dick Eastland, died in the flash floods that swept the camp on July 4th. Maps from First Street, a climate risk modeling company in New York City, show at least 17 structures in the path of floodwaters compared to FEMA's current maps at the camp. It's unclear. Y'all knows when everything is just unclear when it's time to make blame. It's unclear from FEMA's records which specific buildings the camp appealed to have removed from the map. So just to show y'all here, showing exactly where it is, you see the Guadalupe River, Cypress Creek, seeing where the cabins are, the rec hall, the dining. You see all these structures here. We got a business to run. We have a business to run, and just to show you all the color coding for it here. The bright yellow is the 100-year floodplain. The darker yellow is the floodway. New development is highly restricted. And as you can see, take a look at how much of this is inside, not just the 100-year, but the floodway and the 100-year. Take a look at how much of this is inside of that. Just to read for you here briefly, at least 8 of Camp Mystic's buildings are located within FEMA's designated floodway, a dangerous area expected to see high velocity water. 4 of the buildings at camp are camp cabins that housed younger campers. FEMA's maps show the floodplain, a less risky but still dangerous area, failed to include at least 17 structures in this and other areas of the map that appear in First Street's risk analysis. Camp Mystic did not respond to requests for comments on the removals, which was first reported by the Associated Press. FEMA said in a statement that its maps should not be compared to those created by private companies, as the agency has to undergo public review when it updates its maps. The biggest difference between FEMA's maps and those created by the private sector is that FEMA does not map rainfall or flash flooding, according to Jeremy Porter, a data scientist at First Street. Instead, FEMA relies on data from coastal storm surges and large river flooding, even as climate change has made extreme rainfall events more common. The problem isn't limited to Kerr County, Texas, but exists nationwide, according to Porter. The group found that twice as many Americans live in dangerous flood-prone areas as FEMA's map suggests. So I'm going to stop there. Go a little bit further here. Oh yeah, folks, go a little bit further. A little bit further, because I want you to know this was a tragedy that was decades in the making here. The long road to tragedy at the Texas girls' camp where floods claimed 27 lives. A 2018 county meeting foretold the Texas flood that overwhelmed the camp, summer camp for girls. And you can see here where they've got this thing showing you the development that they were doing. So you can see they were like, yeah, keep it going. Keep it going. Keep it going. Start small, then bigger, then bigger, then bigger still. You can see the water over there. Bigger, bigger, and bigger still. Investigators of the catastrophic Hill County flooding in Texas may never be able to pinpoint a precise moment that sealed the fate of 27 young girls, teenage counselors, and staff who perished after a wall of water surged through Camp Mystic on the banks of the Guadalupe River. But perhaps no bigger clue can be found than the account of an otherwise unremarkable and sparsely attended meeting of Kerr County commissioners in March 2018. Members waited with anticipation for news of an application they submitted the previous year for a grant from the state of Texas to help pay for a comprehensive new flood warning system along the Guadalupe. The county's unreliable old network of gauges and sensors installed following flooding in 1987 that killed 10 children trying to flee a waterside church camp had been inactive since 1999. Commissioners were chasing a $1 million slice of federal funding. A $1 million slice of federal funding. Keep that number in mind. A $1 million slice of federal funding, made newly available to the state after a succession of flood disasters, including Hurricane Harvey in August 2017. Now retired Commissioner Tom Moser brought bad news, noting, quote, about 8 different counties were selected, but they didn't select us, according to minutes of the meeting still viewable online. Tom Pollard, the county judge at the time, was incredulous. Quote, they prioritized us lower, he asked. The county's many low-lying and therefore vulnerable youth summer camps immediately adjacent to the Guadalupe uppermost in his mind. They did, Moser replied solemnly. Without that funding from the state, the project foundered. No widespread gauge system was ever set up that would have given early warning of a life-threatening torrent of water further up the river. No sirens ever installed that would have warned Camp Mystic residents that their lives were in peril and they needed to get out immediately. The investigation will look at other missteps and lost opportunities along the way that might have brought a different outcome at the 99-year-old Christian-themed all-girls camp that served as a joyous rite of passage for generations of young Texans. You all can take a look at this picture here. These dark lines on the wall, that shows you how high up the water got. You see the chairs down here. You can imagine how tall a normal person is. This is how high it got. And in reality, it got up to as high as 30 feet in some areas. It got up to as high as 30 feet of water. You figure that the average house in America is 15 feet tall. Now, you think you can tread water. Maybe you can tread 8 feet. Maybe you can tread 10. What about treading 30? What about treading 30 feet? I'm going to make a warning for some folks here. There's nothing funny about this, so if I see laughing emojis in my chat room, please understand there's nothing funny about this. This isn't time to try out your amateur comedian career. This isn't funny. Especially not for us. It says that prominent among them will be this week's revelation that the camp owner and director, Dick Eastland, who lost his own life trying to ferry a group of his youngest campers to safety as the river rose towards a peak height of 37.5 feet, waited more than an hour to issue an evacuation order after receiving a severe flood warning on his phone at 1:14 a.m. on July 4th. Mr. Eastland, according to CNN, the legacy is unclear. The legacy is unclear, according to CNN. They're not clear about it. They're not certain. It's very unclear to them. Maybe I can make things a bit clearer for you all. But by the way, yeah, he waited more than an hour. Now, the thing is, what they'll say is they're not even sure if he was awake because it was 1:14 in the morning. But it appears at some point he did start evacuating people. So he did start evacuating them over an hour after he received the warning. So, yeah, it was over an hour later. So he did start evacuating them just over an hour later. Yet it is to the eternal regret of Moser, a former senior NASA engineer, Challenger disaster, who had studied flood monitoring and alert systems installed in other nearby counties, that money was never found or spent, either then or later, to replace or upgrade a broken mechanism born from a near identical tragedy for the sole purpose of saving lives in the future. Quote, not having the funds to accomplish it was not very satisfying to me, but we tried, Moser told NPR. That's all we could do. We didn't have the resources in the county operating budget to do that. You all notice I keep hammering this. Do you all notice that I keep hammering this and keep slamming on this? Do you notice that? Do you notice I keep doing that? Do you notice I keep doing that? I'm doing that for a reason. I'm doing that for a reason because I want you to remember this, because it's not the whole damn story. Moser, who did not return a message from the Guardian seeking further comment, had advocated for sirens, a proposal dropped from the state grant application when it became clear some residents and commissioners opposed them. What? Did you get that? Some residents and commissioners actually opposed it. Quote, if sirens were there, clearly people would have known about it. Would it have saved everybody? I don't think so. This was an event that's probably one chance in a million, he told a radio network. At Camp Mystic, like everywhere else in the county, residents were reliant on an outdated and patchwork early warning system of alerts. Some were from the National Weather Service, which Eastland's family concedes he did receive. Other messages came from local authorities, some sent only after an inexplicable delay, which others along the Guadalupe bank say they did not see in any case. Inside the camp, with water rising fast, especially around dormitories, closest to the river where the youngest campers, mostly aged 8 and 9, were sleeping, there was chaos. Many of the teenage counselors left in charge of the dormitories were left to make instant life or death decisions on their own, having lost contact with adult supervisors. According to 2 counselors interviewed in the days following the disaster, campers were not allowed to bring mobile phones, no cell phones, and the counselors were made to surrender theirs, leaving them cut off from any emergency alerts. Let me say that again. The campers were not allowed to bring cell phones, and even the counselors had to give up their cell phones. What the hell were you all doing at this camp that required you to make people give up their cell phones? What the hell kind of Epstein Island code of silence is? What kind of Diddy party code of silence is this? Okay, I can understand telling the campers to give up their phones. Those are kids. they'll be on their phones instead of paying attention in camp. And don't worry, they need to pay attention. But the counselors had to give up their cell phones too. What is it you were trying to keep so secret? Because this is secrecy at this point. Now you're trying to keep something secret. So what is it that's so damn important that you didn't want anybody to have communication out? Mr. Eastland? Eastland, who had run the camp for his family since the 1980s and was a past director of the Upper Guadalupe River Authority that pressed for the original warning and alert system, was familiar with the danger of flash flooding and heavy rain. In a Washington Post report that contained harrowing first-hand testimony from girls who were there, parents of some who were rescued from Camp Mystic said it was Eastland and his staff who ignored warnings on the morning of the disaster. Also under scrutiny will be why Eastland made and was granted repeated applications to remove dozens of Camp Mystic buildings from the Federal Emergency Management Agency's 100-year flood map, which allowed the camp to operate and expand in a known risk area. A review by the Associated Press found that 15 of the 30 exempted buildings were at the Camp Mystic Guadalupe site, where most, if not all, of the campers and counselors lost their lives. Let me say that again. The Associated Press found that 15 of at least 30, so half of the 30 of at least 30 buildings were the ones they had exempted. Those half of the 30 buildings had been exempted from the flood map. And they were where most, if not all, of the counselors and campers lost their lives. The buildings that they had exempted, yeah, that's going to be the zone of death. Jeremy Porter, head of climate implications at First Street, a climate risk assessment modeling company, said the dormitories were in a known flood zone, which records show had been swamped numerous times in the camp's near century of existence. This camp is not new. Quote, people that ran the camp had the ability to understand that the risk was close by, the risk was in the area, and maybe adapt the buildings. And there was no action there, he said. In fact, there were letters of map amendments that were submitted instead. So no, not only did they not take action, they actually asked, leave us alone. They actually said, leave us alone. But Porter said it was hard to place blame on any single person or entity. Here we go. Here we go. All right. The Guardian was unable to reach anybody at Camp Mystic for comment. Whole lot of that going on. Donna Gable Hatch, a writer and former staff editor at the Kerrville Daily Times, said she believes lives would have been saved at Camp Mystic with an early warning system, but city and county officials were not responsible for its absence. Quote, if the funds had been made available in a timely and adequate manner, this catastrophe might have unfolded differently. But too often, those at the helm of small towns must wait for permission, wait for funding, wait for bureaucracy to catch up to reality, she wrote in a guest editorial for her former employer. To accuse local leaders of negligence is to completely misunderstand who they are and what this place means. In Kerr County, heartbreak isn't abstract. It has a name, a face. It's a neighbor, a classmate, a church member, or a childhood friend. The truth will come out. In time, we'll trace the chain of failure back to where it truly began. Not in Kerrville. Not us. But in the halls of distant agencies who failed to act with the urgency that rural lives deserved. I went through all of that. Because I wanted you to have the full scope of how the media is covering this case before I get to the next thing. And the next thing I'm going to bring you to is this article from the Daily Beast. Inside Camp Mystic, the elite summer camp where Texans sent their kids. At least 27 children, this is from Paulina Rodriguez. At least 27 children and staff from Camp Mystic, an all-girls Christian summer camp in the Texas Hill Country, died over the holiday weekend in a catastrophic flash flood that killed nearly 90 people. Now we know it's well over 100, might be over 200 by now. Another 10 campers and staffers remain missing. Before the flood, however, Camp Mystic was known among Texas elite as an idyllic destination for young girls, what Texas Monthly once described as a, quote, near flawless training ground for archetypal Texas women. I want to show you this photograph right here. Well, there's Lyndon Baines Johnson and the whole family looking like Betty Crocker, but no less than Texas' favorite senator, segregationist, white supremacist, Lyndon Baines Johnson. Accepting girls as young as 8 years old, Camp Mystic advertises itself as a, quote, wholesome Christian atmosphere where girls, quote, can develop outstanding personal qualities and self-esteem. The camp's tuition for its 4-week summer sessions cost $4,375 in 2011. Back in 2011, the fee was $4,000 back then. Don't worry, it's higher now. It has the clientele and the history to go with its massive price tag. For the last 8 decades, Camp Mystic has been a destination for the state's political elite. President Lyndon B. Johnson sent both of his daughters, Linda 81, Lucy 78, to summer sessions in the 1950s, starting a family tradition that continued for 3 generations. Linda and Lucy's daughters and granddaughters later attended the camp, Texas Monthly reports. 3 Texas governors, Dan Moody, John Connolly, and Price Daniel, all sent their daughters to Camp Mystic between the 1930s and 1960s. At the same time, future First Lady Laura Bush served as a camp counselor while attending Southern Methodist University in the mid-60s. Though Bush's daughters did not attend, Jenna Bush Hager said Monday that many of her family friends, quote, were raised at this camp and many had their children in sessions there as recently as last week. James Baker, who served as Secretary of State, Treasury Secretary, and White House Chief of Staff under Presidents Reagan and Bush, also sent his daughter to Camp Mystic. His granddaughter, SNL writer and comedian Rosebud Baker, was a second-generation camper. Folks, I'm just curious, what's happening at this camp? I'm just curious to be this much in demand. Mr. Eastland, what does your family do at that camp that has been so in demand for decades and that you didn't want anybody, including the counselors, to have cell phones there for? What do y'all do? I'm wondering, what is it you do that you are in such demand by the powerful elite at the very top of our society and for so long? But I'm wondering, do you guarantee them there'll be no cameras? Responding to the news of the flooding on Threads Monday, Rosebud Baker wrote, quote, "This was my summer camp. I have family friends missing their daughters. Please donate to the flood relief efforts. And if you do pray, please pray for their safe return. This is devastating." Originally founded in 1926, Camp Mystic in its current form came to be in 1939 when it was purchased by Agnes Stacy, the socialite daughter of a wealthy Dallas banker.
Alrighty then.
Oh, so this family is old money. Oh, so Mr. Eastland's family is old money. Old Texas money. Oh, they're old Texas money, and by these days, we're talking about pre-World War II. So Prescott Bush, no connection to Nazis or anything like that. Skull and bones, old wealth or anything like that. Oh, okay, so the Eastlands come from old wealth. They come from old Texas money. Oh, they've been rich. Oh, they didn't say rich, they said wealthy. Oh, so the family been papered up. Oh, all right. Oh, that sounds like the Central Texas connected to the politicians can get floodplains moved, can get your property disregarded. That explains it. Now, that's what I was looking to hear. Now it all makes sense. It didn't make sense before, the way that CNN and Reuters and NPR were explaining it and The Guardian was explaining it. It didn't make sense before the way they were saying it. Oh, now it all makes sense. I was wondering how you could get all these things to move like that and couldn't nobody stop you. Yeah, now it all makes sense to you all now, doesn't it? Agnes Stacy, a passionate advocate for women's sports, envisioned the camp as a destination where young, wealthy girls could develop as both athletes and debutantes. Can somebody please tell me the female athletes that came from Camp Mystic? I'll wait. I'm looking at the WNBA. I'm looking at Dominique Dawes. I'm looking at Simone Biles. Will someone please tell me the female athletes that came from Camp Mystic? Who were the female athletes who can draw their heritage back to Camp Mystic and the training they received at Camp Mystic? What the hell were they really doing there? That clearly they were not making athletes. So what were they really doing? Since we are very clear they were not actually making athletes, what were y'all really doing there that you don't want cameras there for? Early iterations of the camp included sessions on posture and charm alongside swimming and horseback riding. Please tell me all the world-class Olympian swimmers that came from Camp Mystic. For the 9 decades since, girls between the ages of 8 and 17 have spent their month in the Hill County trying everything from athletic activities like archery, kayaking, lacrosse, synchronized swimming, and golf to crafting, ceramics, and cooking. Here's my issue. I'm going to say this. Mr. Eastland, here's my issue with the Eastland family. Did you all hear the list of things they just named? Let me get this straight. Your daughters are going to be there for only 4 weeks, not 4 years. 4 weeks. 4 weeks, people. And they're going to learn archery, kayaking, lacrosse, swimming, golf, crafting, ceramics, cooking, posture, charm, horseback riding. How much can you possibly teach them in 30 days? What was this place doing? How much mastery of any of this can you gain how much mastery of cooking can you have in 30 days? For an 8-year-old, people, An 8-year-old, 30 days. How much progress can you make? I got folks in here who are teachers, counselors, work in education. How much progress can you make teaching an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old in 30 days for just cooking alone? Forget all the rest of this stuff. Just cooking by itself. What were they really doing at this place? I'm listening to the itinerary and this ain't making sense to me. I find this to be very, very questionable. What was really going on there? Like many camps in the area, Camp Mystic was faith-based, Skull and Bones. Campers participated in a Bible study course, while Tucker Carlson's Bible, while counselors led daily devotionals in the cabins. Camp Mystic also banned electronics, though there is little cell service in the region to begin with. It's not uncommon for multiple generations of the same family to attend the camp. Former campers look back fondly at memories of a safe haven with foggy morning horseback rides, competitive canoe races, and riverside lessons on fishing, as hundreds of girls disconnected from the outside world, as one alum told Texas Public Radio. The family behind Camp Mystic is nearly as storied as their elite campers. Hello, Mr. Eastland. The other articles didn't quite shed light on some of these other characteristics of your family. I wonder if we can learn a bit more. The family behind Camp Mystic is nearly as storied as their elite campers. Its founder, Stacy, was a close friend of Ann Morgan, daughter of J.P. Morgan.
What? Damn!
As Texas Monthly reports, Stacy developed her philosophy for the camp while traveling to France with the heiress after World War I, where the pair developed a similar program for children dealing with post-war trauma. Before the flood on July 4th, Camp Mystic had long been in the hands of Dick Eastland, the grandson of Agnes Stacy, who assumed control in 1987, a few years after his grandmother's death. Dick Eastland died Friday while attempting to rescue campers from the rising floodwaters. People, now that you hear this part, now that you see where the family really came from, now that you see that they were making hella money, they come from money, we're already making hella money, I want to ask you one question. You'll remember that when we're going back over this thing, they were real upset, remember? They were real upset. They were really unhappy. They were really unhappy because they were saying, you know, we could really use another $1 million. We could use $1 million. Commissioners on the Flood Commission, they were chasing a $1 million slice of federal funding. They wanted to get a grant. So they're telling you that they didn't have the money to install that system. They needed to get $1 million. They needed to get $1 million. They were just short $1 million. And I'm looking around saying, I know somebody who got $1 million. I know somebody right there on the Flood Commission. Why, he got money to expand the camp. Take a look on your screens. He had money to expand the camp. He had money to build, quote, dozens of buildings. Dozens. He had money for that. He had money to expand his camp. He had money and influence to stop them from making that a flood zone. He had money for dormitories. He had plenty of money for that. So, yeah, I know exactly where y'all $1 million at. I know exactly where you can find it. He's sitting right there on the commission with you. And even if he gonna say he didn't have it, I'll be damned. His family was the definition of connected. They had all that. They were the very definition of connected. What you talking about? What do you mean? They know presidents for generations. Their daughters, granddaughters, bankers, and those are just the political folk, people. We're not even talking about the people in business and finance and international commerce. We're not even talking about them. So yeah, I know where you can get that milli from. I know who got it. He right there. But he was more concerned about other things. So let me get this straight. When it comes to the tuitions, put that in his back pocket. But when it comes to financing the protection of his assets, oh, he wants to push that off on the state of Texas and taxpayers. You want to talk about the privileged elite. You want to talk about the privileged elite. Their money and their profits supposed to go in their pockets. And if something does need to get paid for, oh, that's for all the little people. Folks who can't even come 50 miles near your camp. They need to pitch in the money, not you. And one more thing, Dick Eastland, as I reminded you, sat there for a quarter of a century. A quarter of a century. People, do you realize that if he had simply put, and you know these families got trust funds, you know they already got trust funds and annuities and assets where they're just living off the interest already. If they had put away $100,000 a year, do you realize that by 2025, they would have had $2.5 million? That's just if they kick back $100,000 a year. Just $100,000 a year. I went through all of that to make this point. All those girls are dead. All those people are dead. Dick Eastland was not the only one responsible. He was not the only one responsible. And as we have covered here in withering detail, which is why I spent the last hour going over this in absolutely withering detail, so that you all could understand, I got a question for you. Was this a crime? I went through all of that to ask you all a question to bring this into its proper relief. To ask you this question: was this a crime? If those were your daughters that you had to go pick up their drowned, dead body, and you heard all the details I just gave you, would you classify this event as a crime? Because you see, I'm talking to folks here who go around and they changing definitions of things. They're changing the words and the definitions. They change what it is. You come back later and it's something else. And I'm asking you, by the way, so 27 people dead, and over and over again, you saw as person after person, your Berkeley professor, the guy at First Street, everybody talking about, well, there really isn't somebody to blame. So I'm going to say this to you directly. If Camp Mystic, I'm going to say it. If Camp Mystic was instead called Camp Diddy.
What? Damn!
If Camp Mystic was called Camp Diddy and Sean Diddy Combs and Bad Boy Records owned it for the last 80 years, if Camp Mystic was, Camp Cosby, if Camp Mystic were instead called Camp Cosby, and you found that Bill Cosby is grabbing the hoes, stacking them deep, selling them cheap, and making money hand over fist. If it was Bill Cosby making money hand over fist, and then you find out that, oh, he talked to his friends in the government, they would be yelling DEI and criminalizing it all over the damn place. But if this were called Camp Cosby, would folks be saying we don't know who to blame? You can't blame everybody. It's not a local issue. You can't blame the camp director. Would they be saying that? Would they be saying that, people? Hell no. Hell no. You know damn well Bill Cosby could be out of the country when this happened. They'd go over to Europe, wherever the hell he hiding at, and come grab his ass and immediately put him under indictment. U.S. Attorney Damian Williams or whoever else paying Bondi, they would immediately be grabbing him and putting him under indictment. Immediately. But that's just me talking, folks. Because it doesn't matter. You know why it doesn't matter? Because according to the governor of Texas, according to CNN, according to NPR, no crime. Dozens of people dead. A paper trail that goes back decades of negligence, criminal negligence, cover up. And they're telling you ain't no crime. Ain't no crime. Nobody is discussing this as a crime, and dozens are dead. Nobody is discussing Jeffrey Epstein's clients and accomplices and saying we need to add all those numbers into the crime stats. So when you do discuss so-called black-on-black crime, folks, does this qualify as white-on-white crime?
And deal with it.
You know, when you hear about these mass shootings, when they kill dozens of people, by the way, if you counted up those numbers dead, but you do know that the government doesn't really work that way. Remember? When they go over these crime stats, they massage the numbers, they change it. Oh, it's a special event. It doesn't get counted that way. They certainly don't racialize it. The point of me holding tonight's program was to clarify for you all, by the way, when events like this happen, or mass shootings, or a Jeffrey Epstein, or you get the idea, they don't racialize those. They don't put these events in their proper racial focus, in their proper racial context. They don't do that. Megyn Kelly and Joe Rogan will not pull up to do that. You will not get your white supremacist right-wingers and YouTubers. Nobody talks about it like you heard me talk about it tonight. A Boeing airplane goes down. The white men at the company cash their multi-billion-dollar bonuses. Hundreds of people die. Nobody racializes that. Nobody racializes that. Nobody does that. That's the point I'm making to you here. I can point you to your car manufacturers, General Motors right now. Since Mary Barra was CEO, we don't have to go back to the 70s. Dangerous cars, people having accidents, they had brake issues, steering issues, folks out here dying. Nobody racializes that, and those don't get counted among the crime statistics. even after you have class action lawsuits that show that these people knew. They sent these cars out here. They sent these planes out here. They send these boats out here. They send these electronics out here. They have engineers and people in the company telling them for years and years. Tesla, Elon Musk became the richest man in the world, watching people burn alive in his cars. And you damn right I'm yelling it because nobody else is telling it. Elon Musk became the richest man in the world, watching people burn to death in his cars, and they gave him awards and made him the richest man on the planet for it. They have never discussed it as a criminal act. He just tells the folks, turn it over to the insurance company, sweep up your damn ashes, and keep it pushing. If Sean Diddy Combs were running Tesla, they'd have been shut it down, put him in prison for life, confiscated all the resources and given it to a white company. They would have been took it. They would have been took it. That's not accidental. That's not accidental. Understand that. I can show you incident after incident, issue after issue, problem after problem, company after company that's been going on all this damn time. And that's what, when these things happen with us, folks sit up here and tell you, oh, we're going to racialize this. They take a look at the victims. They want to make sure that they put that in its proper context. Do you realize how many thousands of people die every year? And we can go down the damn list. Nobody criminalizes these things. They're given a pass. Not only are they given a pass, they are given exemption from federal law, state law. This isn't just taking assault with a deadly weapon, assault with a gun, assault and battery, and turning it to felony assault. This is telling you there was no crime. This is telling you that there wasn't even a crime committed. There's no reason to discuss crime stats because there's been no crime. We can talk about the BP oil spill. Damn! Folks, do you want to keep this going? We can talk about all those things. Nobody discusses those as a RICO. Now, you see, Diddy can have a record label and they tell you, oh, that's criminal RICO. You niggas is just savages and thugs. Okay. BP in their corporate headquarters and their penthouses doing far, far worse, and no one characterizes that or treats it the same. While these same people are making their yearly trips to Epstein Island, these same CEOs and politicians that you're going to say, well, when they kill folks, and Diddy didn't even kill nobody. Well, these other folks are out here killing folks by the hundreds and thousands on their way to Epstein Island, and no one characterizes these as a crime. No one says we need to add this to the crime stats. No one does that. I'm not even going to get into just the pedophilia and stuff like that. I'm not going to even really get into the serial killing. I can leave that off the table. Let's just take these stats for the broad things I just named. I can show you documents and paperwork where these folks have knowingly gotten people killed, been told what you're doing is bad. You're going to get folks killed. These are lethal risks. And the media does not hold specials. They followed Diddy around. They followed Cosby around. They followed OJ around. You notice they're not really following Epstein's story around like that. People, they're not giving you wall-to-wall coverage because you see in the case of Diddy, we want to talk to everybody you know, Bill Cosby, everybody you know. all these other folks, they don't want to talk to nobody. They cover this stuff in passing. No investigative reporting, no investigative detail. Even your so-called infamous British tabloids, none of them doing that. None of them are giving this the same scrutiny and giving this the same close eye. None of them are doing that. I'm asking a very simple question. What you heard over the last previous hour here, if that was your children and you now found out all these facts and all these details that I gave you, is that a crime? Everything you've heard for the last hour, would that qualify to you as a crime? And if it does, then why is it that apparently it doesn't qualify that way to any of our so-called media outlets anywhere else? Your YouTubers, your would-be newscasters online, why is it that nobody else characterizes it this way? And we see this every damn day. When I saw this happen, I said 27 dead, and I know there's culpability, and nobody is calling this a crime. No one is factoring this into your stats. And of course, they'll try to finagle things, and to show you how evil they are, they'll try to figure out how to blame some black folk. There were no black people anywhere near this, but your white supremacists will try to do that anyway. Of course, you can't run from the truth. I'm white and I say so only gets you so far. You can't run from the truth. However, you might disagree. Therefore, we're going to go ahead and open up the link to the Zoom. I was letting you all know early in the program here tonight that I know we're going to be very heavy on information tonight. So thank you for everyone who chose to bear with me as I went over the details. It was very, very important to stack up all those details to show you what the various media outlets were saying. I need you all to hear it for yourselves what the various media outlets were saying right before I got to the last one. That family is wealthy, not rich, wealthy. They're papered up, been papered up for decades. They got their tentacles all up in and all over Texas politics. And nobody was saying what you heard here and putting it in its proper context, that they were really only motivated to keep their profits. But yeah, as far as they were concerned, this situation needs to get fixed, but we'll be damned if our family's money needs to be used to fix it. And I'm going to tell you why I suspect that that is. I'm not even going to make you wait. I'm going to tell you why I suspect that that is. I suspect that the reason that they did that, they say, yeah, our family's money ain't going to be used for that, is because the Eastland family didn't like the idea that there would be all these other people benefiting from it. I mean, if they're going to pay $1 million, then it needs to go to the benefit of their interests. Well, the camp is the only real interest that they have on the Guadalupe River. And so you see, if it's going to be a whole bunch of other folks here on the Guadalupe River, and if we're going to have a system that's going to benefit everybody on the Guadalupe River, then why the hell does our wealthy family have to be the only one to foot the bill and foot the tab? Everybody should have to pay that. So if everybody ain't gonna chip in, we damn sure ain't gonna foot the bill solo. I suspect that that was their rationale for doing that. I suspect that that was their motive for doing it. They said, why in the world should we foot this bill all by ourselves if everybody up and down the river's going to benefit? So everyone's going to benefit, but only us? We're the only ones going to shoulder the load? Even if we sitting on tens of millions, we're the only ones going to shoulder the damn load? We good on that. We good on that. Y'all need to hurry up and get these tax dollars through here. You ain't going to sit up here and pimp our family. And if everybody don't want to chip in, well, damn it, I guess it don't matter. But don't expect us to carry the whole damn load by ourselves. Us or our elite connected friends. It ain't going to be on us, Jack. Not going to be all on us, Jack. However, you might disagree. So I've gone ahead and pinned the link to the Zoom at the top of the chat room. I know it's a rather somber subject, but it was necessary. This is the kind of video that people like to pass around and show people because it brings you the hard, concrete evidence that you can't get around. And it begs the question, why is it that nobody's doing the math the way you all heard it done here tonight? Why is nobody doing that? Why are so many people invested in not doing it? They're quick to bring you stats in other places. I want these stats over here. And they're quick to tell you, yeah, we can't do that. Can't do it. Is this a crime? We'll find out here shortly. Before we do, I want to thank everyone who has contributed to tonight's program on PayPal, Super Chat, Venmo. Shout out here to my man, Mr. Rich Berg. Thank you very much for your support tonight. We appreciate that. My man Keenan, Cyberdon 100, Black to Death, Yimmy Ben Israel, G-Mac, everybody, Miss SF Black, Mr. SF Black. Thank you very much to everyone here for your support here. G-Mac said, fun fact, Kerrville, Texas was in the path of totality for both the October 2023 annual eclipse and April 2024 total eclipse, forming an X right over the town. Make of that what you will. Thank you, Tom Slick. We appreciate that as well. We're going to go ahead and take a very brief commercial, non-commercial break. When we come back, we'll take some of your calls and more. This is the Black Channel.
Did you know hip-hop is more than just music? It's a movement shaping the places we live, work, and grow. Rap Estate, hip-hop's influence on housing, community, and neighborhood development dives deep into how this powerful culture has become a force for change. From its roots in urban neighborhoods to its global impact, discover how artists like Public Enemy and Jay-Z use lyrical storytelling to spotlight issues like gentrification, economic justice, and affordable housing. This groundbreaking book uncovers the stories, struggles, and solutions inspired by hip-hop, turning beats and rhymes into blueprints for real change. Ready to see how hip-hop is rebuilding communities and empowering lives? Get your copy of Rap Estate today and join the movement.
Be the teacher, knowledge on the block. Got the kids learning, minds open like a lock. Books and skills from the east to the west. Bringing education, yeah, we're simply the best. Classes on fire, brains burning with desire. Innovation driving like a tire through the mire. Math, science, history, we got the whole range. Kids hitting new heights, teachers making a change. Used to be the teacher, stacking up the grades. Future bright shining, no need for no shades. Got the youth thriving, moving up the ladder. Smart and sharp, brains growing fatter. Lessons so lit, yeah, they stay in a blaze. Every mind sharp like a sword in the haze. Mr. B in the house breaking knowledge chains. Education kingpin, we repping the games. Listen, be the teacher.
The Honey Badger and the Mongoose is a children's story for the family of how a honey badger and mongoose fight an evil alliance of venomous cobra snakes and hyenas that overhauls the balance of the savannah. The Big Five. The honey badger demands reparations. Will the Big Five give the honey badger reparations? Can the evil alliance of cobras and hyenas be stopped? The best new price for the hard and soft cover is at www.thehoneyBadgerandtheMongoose.com. You can also find this book at Amazon, Audible, and Kindle.
Order yours today to experience all the benefits of Ash Kickin' Body Butter. With skin so smooth and soft, you'll thank us for it. Shop Ash Kickin' online. That's ASHKICKIN.com.
Hi, this is Brenda Starr, creator of Poetry with a Purpose and author of the book Pressed But Not Crushed. Pressed But Not Crushed is an anthology of political poems that address current and historical issues in American descendants of slave population and African American population. The book describes slaveries and its residuals, Jim Crow segregation, social depredation, and other relevant issues to American descendants of slaves and African Americans, including the current political climate that does not address our issues.
This is the Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. Very glad to be with you all here this evening. And we are discussing the racism of white crime stats. I'm going over the story here from Camp Mystic, Kerrville, Texas. Dozens dead. They knew about it for decades. They did political maneuvering to ignore the threat so their family could keep raking in the money. And eventually, something so catastrophic came up. When you start practicing neglect, you get very slothful. When you become negligent on a regular basis, when you just start getting lax on a regular basis, at first you're doing it, strategically and deliberately, but eventually you just get slothful. You just get slothful and complacent about everything. And then finally, when a real disaster shows up that you need to be vigilant about, you've practiced being slothful and negligent for so long that you move slowly. When the day comes that you actually need to run, you don't know how to run anymore. That's not your reaction. Your reaction is not to run. Your reaction is to treat it the way you treat everything else. And this time it came up snake eyes. Is this a crime? Is the real question, though. Is this a crime? And shouldn't we count this in the national crime stats? Let me go ahead and jump over here on Zoom. I got Superpower Media here on Zoom. What's on your mind, brother?
Jason, yes, this is a crime. And the way you have presented this tonight, I haven't heard it like this on any news channel, radio station, broadcast, anywhere. And if I'm in trouble, I would definitely hire you as my lawyer. I'll pay the money because, you remind me of a Johnny Cochran. The way you put things together and the way you do your investigating. And I just want to say also that there's many crimes to this. This whole thing doesn't make any sense. And why would anyone send their children 8 years old or any age in the woods? I grew up in the country. It's so many things that can happen out in the country. To your children, and you sending them off by themselves with no cell phone communication, with first of all, with grown-ups that's not their parents, So yeah, it was all kind of things going on that's wrong with this picture. That I think that it could have been some other things going on behind the scenes, also like some, you know what I mean. And so yeah, I believe that people are running away from this issue because they know that if there was to be anybody brought forward, it'd be a lot of people going to jail for a lot of other reasons besides just the flood, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing this to the forefront, and because no one else is talking about it like you're talking about it. Be one, Jason.
Well, brother, let me ask you a question here. Why do you think
Yeah.
it is that these other folks have not? You got all of these news outlets, man. All these news outlets out here. Why is it they haven't done this? Why am I here and why have they not done this?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. When you send children to the woods, camp, they call it camp, to try to cover it up. We went through this back in the 80s. They had a big scandal with the Boy Scouts. What happened with the leaders, messing over the children. Think about this, man. These guys been in the woods with these kids for decades. And these parents are paying top dollar to send that 8-year. Think about that. I don't even have that. I got all my sons are grown, but I would never in my life had to send my sons to camp by themselves at that age or any age with people that I don't know. If anything, I'm going with them. Football camp, basketball camp, I don't care what kind of camp it is. To send your 8-year-old off with some adults that you don't even know their background or know, that is just insane to me. Then you paying $4,000 to do it.
No.
So yeah, if they wasn't, that's crazy.
No, brother. See, this is the part that I didn't talk about in the first hour here. This is the part that I didn't talk about in the first hour here. I want y'all to understand something. Because you have to go looking for this. You got to go looking for it, folks. If you don't get very much information about it. But if you all want to go online and take a look into it, you can go ahead and Google how much Camp Mystic charges now. You can go take a look into it now.
Insane.
No. What I'm saying is that y'all can go take a look into it now if you want to. You're going to come up with some things here. Let me show y'all on your screen. You can go to Google and just look up Camp Mystic fee. You can go to Google and just look that up. This is what you come up with. On your screens, everybody, this is what you come up with. According to their AI, 30-day session, $43.75, but for a 4-week term, the tuition is $7,600.
That's crazy.
Go down here, you see other articles and stuff talking about $7,600. I saw some that said $10,000. I came across some others that said $10,000. Well, Jason, why can't you just tell us what it is? Because if you go to their website, all you get is an application to apply. It says there's a $400 refundable fee deposit for your application. But when you go to their website, folks, all you get, let me go ahead and see if I can take a look at that for y'all right quick so you can see it for yourselves. When you go to their website, it gives you the stuff to apply, but it doesn't give you any numbers or anything. It doesn't give you any numbers to nothing. You just get something that says you can apply. It just says, it goes over an itinerary. It just says that you can apply, and that's it. Camper application form. Let me go ahead and make sure I got all this up for you here. Just want to see how that goes right quick, just to make sure it actually loads up for you all so it doesn't spend a bunch of time. I might have to do that a little bit differently there, but yeah. Just so I just wanted to make sure that you all could see this for yourselves, because in case nobody actually showed you all exactly what it looks like, I want to go over this here for a few moments, and so I want y'all to see this for yourselves. It's trying to load the Microsoft. Make sure you're not a bot thing. That's fine. But I want the world to see this for yourselves so you can see exactly how it works. Okay, I got everything loaded up for you all here. This is Camp Mystic's website. This is Camp Mystic for Girls. This is their website. This is Camp Mystic for Girls here. Has their history, the directors and staff, activities, downloads, contact us. Okay, y'all see all this stuff here. Guadalupe River, the original camp. You see the itinerary. You got 4 weeks, Cypress Lake, new camp. Okay, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 term. You get that. Our camper application requires a $400 deposit that is fully refundable up until the month of March of the year the camper is scheduled to attend. For campers that are on the waiting list, the deposit is fully refundable at any time. Campers are allowed to attend Camp Mystic after they complete 2nd grade. Folks, you notice all it said was the $400 deposit, doesn't show anything else as far as cost. If you click here where it says click here for camper application information, you come to this screen right here. Once again, it only talks about the $400 deposit. That's all it says. Just the $400 deposit. Click here for the traditional paper application. Okay, how about click here to apply online? When you click here to apply online, this is the screen that comes up. That simply says, campers are eligible to attend Mystic the summer after they complete the 2nd grade. Each camper application requires a $400 deposit that's fully refundable. It does not tell you on the site, it doesn't tell you how much their service is. They just want you to send your application. And what that tells me, for those of us from the Deep South, we know how this is. Oh, you have to be approved for their camp before you apply. I know what that means. You have to be approved to attend their camp before you apply. If your parents are not already on the inside, if your people are not already approved, you ain't gonna get in anyway. So this is really just a formality. This is a formality. People, do you see how sparse on information this is? That means that the folks who can get in already know how to get in. This application is to keep the rest of you out. The folks who already don't see no black faces here, do you? What? Damn! I see what kind of camp y'all running. I see what kind of camp they're running. And I wanted folks to see what that was about right here. By the way, if you go and take a look at their website, couldn't help but notice no information. Ain't nobody saying nothing. So we supposed to just apply. Well, here's your application with nobody telling you how much it is. Nothing on the application that tells you how much it is. Nothing. Now, what the hell kind of camp doesn't give you any information about how much it's gonna cost? Nothing at all. Just no information. Just okay.
Yeah.
Man, don't you understand? You can't get, if you ain't already in, you can't get in. This is for people who already are connected and everybody knows why they're going there already. I think it's unlikely you're going to see a bunch of lawsuits blow up about it either, because everybody already knows. Everybody already knows.
Yeah.
So that's Camp Mystic, folks. I'll let you have the last word, brother.
Yeah. Also, I want to let everybody know it's been raining in Texas since what? April, May, June, July. I mean, I've never seen this much rain. I mean, it's been, but the week before that happened, it's been raining back to back nights. It would rain at night. And then coming up to that incident, it was raining. So, yeah, I was headed to Galveston when that happened. So it's been raining in Texas back to back, and you can tell that the lakes are full, the rivers are full. So they should have seen something. They would have known something, even going down the Lake Mystic.
Brother, I mean, they have enough experience. They've had they got decades of experience. In other words, you would need to build a higher foundation. If you're going to have those dormitories there, they would have been built on stilts. They would have been built on pylons to get them further up above the floodplain. Only in this case, now you talking about they'd have to be about 30, 45 feet tall. So you can do that, but they had to be on stilts 30, 45 feet tall. The real issue is most likely they got a limited amount of land that they actually own or whatever, and they didn't want to have to back up away from that river or they got activities that make it maybe the closer they are to the river is more convenient for them. So maybe the river is at a certain depth most of the time, and that makes it easier for them to get their kayaks out there, and they don't want to have to back way away from the river because it would make it a lot harder to get there. Okay, well, take a look what the hell happened. And the politicians and everybody else, they were hand in hand with it, and you can do that. You can do that when you're the complexion for the protection. Thank you very much. Give us a call tonight. We appreciate that. Y'all, if you go look online for how much it costs, you're just going to get tens of thousands. You get varying things, but what you will not get is a quote from Camp Mystic to tell you what it is. You have to go looking and Googling and get a bunch of other websites that they have to investigate sideways, but nobody's really telling you what it is. But I've got numbers as low as 4,000 and as high as 20,000. All right, let me get up back over here on Zoom. All right, we got Buck Dancing Barrister over here. All right, Barrister, what's on your mind?
Oh, I have a lot on my mind. First off, as you know, I live in the city of Chicago, and I actually get all of my information on crime, trending crime stats. I don't focus on the local media and the newspapers. They don't report everything. I actually get all of my information from a website called cwbchicago.com. This website basically is fair, unbiased. They report everything from north side, south side, west side. They gather all the public records, all the arrests, and all of that sort. And they usually do these quarterly or annual reports on violent crime and crime stats. And
give us the short version, sir. You are babbling.
All right. Yeah. But the short version. Black people in Chicago commit 67.8% of violent crimes compared to any other race. Chicago's fairly segregated.
So, like the story I just gave you tonight, does that qualify as violent crime?
Well, basically the story that you just gave right now is like a minority.
Oh, that's okay.
The people that you talk about are
Barrister,
like 1%.
Barrister, I think that's a great thing that you're doing right there. Can you give me the violent crime stats in Nigeria?
We're not talking about Nigeria.
Can we give the violent crime stats for your family in Nigeria? In Lagos, can we give that? Can we discuss the sexual predations, rape stats, child molestation stats in Nigeria? Can we do that right quick?
Jason, can we just stick to the topic at hand?
Yes, that is the topic at hand.
I'm not familiar with the crime stats in Nigeria because I don't live there, but I am familiar with the crime stats in Chicago.
Well, what you need to do is go get accustomed to that and find out some information. I think you'll find it to be very revelatory. So the fact that you don't know anything about you and your people, that's not a good commentary. So, if you would let us know the sexual assault and murder stats in Nigeria, I think folks would find that to be very enlightening. I think you would be. Remember, y'all, he owns a mansion over there. What? He owns a mansion over there, remember?
Nigga, please.
He owns a mansion. He owns a ranch, so he's a big time money mover over there. So I find that very, very interesting that he doesn't know anything about it. Bruh, ain't you worried about who they raping outside your mansion? They're out there raping folk right outside of his Igbo mansion. He don't know what's going on. That's odd. That's odd to me. If somebody was raping folk right outside my mansion, I would want to know. I would want to know the stats on that. I would be curious what the stats are right outside my mansion. Let me go ahead and see if we can get Camelot up here on Zoom. Camelot, what's on your mind? Okay, we're working on Camelot here. Camelot here. We'll give you 2 more seconds, and then we're going to have to go ahead and move on here. Not sure what's going on with Camelot. You are literally in the dark. I'll give you 2 seconds to get a light on, and then we're going to have to keep going. We're not going to slow down here tonight. So whatever's going on, you're going to have to come back some other time. Okay, sir, I don't know what's happening there, but thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. That looked like one of those movies directed by Hype Williams. It was real dark. I don't know what's going on. It was real dark. So, folks, it's very interesting the way folks do things. They count numbers the way they want to. When I sit here and say, let's make it 1-to-1, all of a sudden folks get stupid. They don't know nothing. They don't know the numbers. All of a sudden they don't do that. And here's what I'm telling you. What I'm telling you is that even for Buck Dancing, barrister there, what you find out is that, by the way, it's okay to kill folks in unlimited numbers if you're the right color and you do it the right way. If you do it the right way, you can kill as many folk as you want to. All this really means is we're not connected enough to do so. That's all it means. That's very, very interesting. What that means is that some crimes are legal. Some crimes are not crimes. And some criminals are not criminals. That's what it's telling you there. That's what it's telling you there. That some criminals are not criminals. Now that, what I'm saying here is that I just want things to be the way they're supposed to be. I want things to be the way they're supposed to be. So if you're going to say that this is not a crime, this needs to not be a crime for everyone. If this is not going to be a crime, it needs to not be one for everyone. If this too is a crime, it needs to be counted the same way. If this is just simple negligence, well, we need to count it the same way for everyone. But if we did this and it would be murder, manslaughter, well, then it needs to be counted the same way for everyone. And I'm just simply informing you all tonight, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens that doesn't get counted the way it does when we show up. It doesn't get counted the way it does when we show up. People, do you realize that they grabbed Diddy for sex trafficking one female, just one? They grabbed Diddy for sex trafficking one female. Allegedly sex trafficking one chick, Jeffrey Epstein. Remember, he had to go to court actually 3 times, but he didn't get imprisoned until the 2nd or 3rd time. Y'all can go look into that if you want to. They, just like Bernie Madoff, they came across him more than once. No RICO charge. And now the president of the United States running interference. This is how far it's gotten. And this is how far it goes. So when you get folks who try to wave stats in front of you, please understand, don't let them play politics with you. Don't let them play mind games with you and deceive you into separating some depths and saying that doesn't count. Because what these folks are telling you here is that, well, yeah, I mean, not all deaths count as a crime. Well, not all deaths where you could have prevented it. Not all deaths where you made it possible. Not all deaths where you made it happen. Well, not all of them are for a crime. You see, if Diddy was facing life in prison because he liked having sex with prostitutes and somebody was, quote, made to do something against their will, all these dead children dying against their will, no crime here. You're going to tell us all of a sudden, oh, that's different? Interesting. All of a sudden it's about to be different? Yeah, you see, when you show up, people don't play those games with you. When you show up, they ain't going to play them word games with you. Remember, Paul Mooney taught us that. You sit up here and try to subscribe the white vocabulary for yourself, and they're going to be like, yeah, nigga, you're going to be insane with this life sentence. You're going to be insane in this electric chair. I bet your ass going to go sane just as soon as we start hitting you with the electricity. Bet you about to be sane right then. Oh, you're going to be insane just long enough to get in this chair. bringing it to your attention going forward. Do you realize folks dying by the thousands? And they tell you that that's okay. No crime here. None. Keep your eyes open for that going forward. It happens all the time. It's not just Epstein Island. Folks are treating it like a news scandal, and I'm telling you, by the way, where are the crime stats? Oh, nobody's been charged? Oh, well, that won't be a crime stat. We know there's a bunch of suspects. No crime stats. And none of your white supremacist newscasters, outlets, or YouTubers demanding that there should be one. None of them demanding that it should be. The Sackler family and OxyContin, they file lawsuits, they file class actions. Nobody has treated that like a crime yet. Fentanyl, nobody's treating that like a crime yet. No RICO yet. No RICO yet. With astronomical Holocaust numbers, and nobody is discussing it or phrasing it as a crime. As I've always taught you, remember, when you show up to say, all right, it's time to mass incarcerate white society, they're going to turn around in unison like they did with the professor in First Street and the rest of them and tell, ain't no crime here. Bury the kids and everything else. No crime here. You're not going to mass incarcerate. No, we're not eligible for that. Take it seriously. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up here tonight. I'd like to thank everyone who has contributed toward tonight's program on PayPal, Super Chat, Venmo. Shout out here to Fear to None, Michelle Hallock, and everyone else here who has contributed toward tonight's program on PayPal, Super Chat, Venmo, and elsewhere. Thank you very much for your support. If you are new here to the Black Channel, welcome to the Haven of Intelligent Black Thought. We do this every weekend, some holidays, the weekends, holidays, some days in between. Click that red subscribe button, click that yellow notification bell. Join us each and every time that we're here. If you haven't been to our website, blackchannelfilms.com, check out our groundbreaking best-selling documentary work, blackchannelfilms.com. That is blackchannelfilms.com. I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in to tonight's program, live or recorded. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing. And this concludes tonight's broadcast of the Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. And until next time, my brothers and my sisters from around the world, remember, black is the future, and the future is uncompromised.